ladies, gentlemen, dear colleagues. Welcome you back to our first panel this morning. And I think everyone is now fine again after our nice experience we just had in Rio. But we enjoyed very much the invitation to this great restaurant last evening. And now we have 3 speakers for our panel on China, India, and Latin America. And we start with our colleague from Shanghai, Haibin. So just to give you his background information, Dr. Haibin is a senior fellow, deputy director of the Center for American Studies, and assistant director of the Institute for International Strategic Studies, both located at the Shanghai Institute for International Studies. So you know probably the abbreviation SIIS. Dr. Niu joined SIIS after having received his PhD of International Relations at the quite well-known Fudan University in Shanghai in 2006. He is also Deputy Secretary General of the Chinese Association for Latin American Studies, and his current research focuses on international development cooperation, emerging powers, Latin America. He was a visiting fellow and scholar to Brazil, to South Africa, United States, and Germany. And I would suggest that we go along the order outlined in the program, and everyone has 20 to 25 minutes to speak. And in the end, after we had all 3 presentations, we will have a question and answers round and some short discussions. And we just decided, because we are running out of time, to skip the break and just to have 5 minutes to rearrange the next panel, and would invite you after our panel to come and take coffee, take some cookies, that you can survive until we have lunch break. Thanks a lot. I'm passing the word on to Neo Haibin.
Good morning. It's a great pleasure to be invited to by PUC-Rio and GIGA.
I think it's off. You have to turn on. Let's try to turn on. Maybe.
Sit here.
Please go ahead.
Me sit here. I sit here. Okay. Good morning. It's a great pleasure to come back to Rio and PUC-Rio for this wonderful seminar. Today I think yesterday we had a lot of discussion about the economic dimension of the China-Latin American relationship. This morning I will touch upon the political and strategic dimension of the relationship. I think this is very important from a Chinese perspective. If you don't have a very friend and very good political relationship, it's difficult to develop the economic relationship. I think that's the basic logic. So as you know, currently the economic agenda dominates China's Latin American cooperation, where the political and strategic aspects shouldn't be overlooked. Because China has increasingly presented itself as a full-fledged global player, which reflected in the relationship with Latin America by building a very comprehensive agenda. And also, I think both sides are exploring the new ties to adapt themselves into a transitional international system. So I think both sides shared some similar strategic worldview and a new definition of the national interests. This is quite important for both sides to pursue autonomy in a transitional international order and to achieve their national interests. And both sides identified themselves as development partner. This is also very important. It's different from the donor or receiver of the economic assistance. I think this kind of partnership spirit is a feature of the Chinese foreign strategy. It doesn't focus on the allies and enemies. It focuses on the partners. But one scholar asked me, can you tell me what kind of countries cannot be treated as partners for China? I think this is a very good question. I think I will explain the partnership later. I think at least the partnership should be based on the mutual benefits and mutual respect. This is helpful to build a strong and sustainable relationship. And also, I think a good political relationship with strategic confidence to each other it's very important to achieve and to deepen the economic cooperation. I think there are some major political aspects of the relationship. The first is that they have a shared worldview toward a multipolar and just world order. And also, both sides respect the diversity of the political systems and development roads. And the third is they have a pro-globalization approach rather than pursuing a geopolitical game. And also, they are trying to build a full-fledged development partnership. And also, of course, there is a Taiwan issue in the relationship, especially in Central America, and also South America is Paraguay. And the first point I want to emphasize is we need a perspective of the international system to look for to review the China's relationship with Latin America. As we know, the relationship is not very long, and especially to get attention from the beginning of this century. So during the long history of the Cold War, I think both sides learned a lot to have an independent and peaceful diplomacy. This is the best way to serve the national interests. Because during the Cold War, we don't have the freedom to develop our relationship. So it is until the normalization of the relationship between China and the United States, both China and most of the Latin American countries start to build the diplomatic relationship, and in the long period, they focus on the political cooperation, rather than on the economic cooperation. So, but after the September 11 terrorist attack in 2001, I think Latin American countries' economic tie with China getting stronger. This is not because of China take advantage of the live of the U.S., but because I think it's a coincidence, and I think both China and Latin America needs to focus on their economic agenda, but the United States focus on the security agenda. So it's different priorities. So during the Bush administration, the U.S. The focus of the U.S. foreign policy is in the Middle East and Central Asia. But for the Obama administration, it moved to the Pacific Asia. So Latin America is not the priority for its biggest neighbor. But it's getting important for the Chinese global presence. From the Chinese perspective, how to identify Latin America in the current system, I think it's different from the views that China is going to Latin America to balance the United States hegemony. I think it's important to understand the emerging China-Latin America relationship as a part of China's efforts to be a global player. So China's approach to Latin America is based on win-win cooperation in a globalized world And China's economic growth strategy is to integrate itself into the world economy, and Latin America is naturally an increasingly important partner for China in this context. And also, China gradually realized the increasing autonomy of the Latin American countries. Because the Latin American countries, they have its own regional cooperation agenda led by countries like Brazil. And also, the Mexico in recent years has come back to Latin America with the initiative of the Pacific Alliance. So it created more opportunities for the Latin American countries to build a relationship with Asian countries, especially China. I think China also highly valued Latin America's over-importance in the international system in terms of the economic global governance, peacekeeping, climate change, etc. And like Brazil, it has been a founding member of the New Development Bank and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, this kind of important multilateral initiatives by China. So why the political aspect is important? I think there are some features of the China-Latin America political relationship. First one is the top design. This is a new term for the Xi's presidency. Focus on the top design at the top level of the politicians, then to give a roadmap for either the domestic reform agenda or the international relationship. So, in case of the Latin America, we issued a policy paper in 2008 to give a grand roadmap for the relationship, and later on we provided the idea like the 1+3 and +6, 3+3, this kind of ideas, try to make it clear what is the priority for cooperation, what is the principles for cooperation, and also what is the resources to support this kind of cooperation. This is, I think, is very important. And also, China is trying to build strategic partners across the region with a very comprehensive cooperation agenda, such as the FTAs, cooperation in areas of the high politics, like the military cooperation, this kind of issues, space cooperation. This strategic partners is important if you look at Peru, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Mexico. I think under this strategic partnership, we promote deepen the relationship either in the economic aspect and also the political aspect. So this is a very useful term. And also the localization as a way to achieve globalization. I think this is also becoming more and more important for the China and the Latin America relationship, because usually the Chinese don't know Latin America very well with the experiences with interaction with the developed countries. At the very beginning of the reform, China focused to learn from the Western countries to get the financial resources and the technological resources, this kind of things. But for the relationship with Latin America as a developing region, so China needs to learn how to make this kind of a new global relationship down to the earth. And after the more than 10 years, I think, experiences of the intensive interaction with Latin America, I think both major Chinese actors learned a lot how to do business here, how to build a local partnership, how to be more innovative and creative to make the cooperation more sustainable. So I think the political aspects, the other aspect is rising importance of Latin American countries in the global agenda. If we consider why President Xi visited Latin America so frequently, I think it's because of the BRICS summit in Brazil in 2014, and this year in Peru is the APEC summit. So this kind of multilateral platform is important happening in Latin America and attracts the Chinese leaders here and to visit other neighboring countries also. So that's the logic. This is a new thing about the political cooperation. It's intellectual cooperation. This is a new term just raised by Premier Li Keqiang when he visited Cuba last month. I think the key idea is to exchange the development experiences, to sharing each other's successful experiences to achieve domestic development. This is different from the past practices such as the Washington Consensus, this kind of things. It's not a one-way description. It's a two-way exchange of ideas about the governance. I think this new term was based on the practices in the past decades because during the meeting between the Chinese leaders and the Latin American leaders, one important content is to exchange the state governance and the political management. But this is overlooked by the international media. They focus on the economic deals and overlooked these important political aspects. I think this is a big obstacle to understand the relationship. And also, as a relatively advanced region in the developing regions, Latin America is an important case for China to not only to get the market, access to the market, but also it's a kind of alternative development model for China to learn. As you know, China is the Communist Chinese Party is kind of revolutionary party. It lacks the knowledge and the experiences to govern a country. So it learns a lot from the Soviet Union, from the United States, even from Singapore. But also Latin America is getting into the eyes of the Chinese leaders because Latin America, most of the Latin American countries, they achieved a lot in terms of the democracy building and also the market economy, the civil society. So it's quite important for China, for Chinese decision makers and also scholars to learn the experiences of Latin America, especially at the current stage. China is focusing on building inclusive growth. It can learn a lot from Latin Americans' experiences in this aspect. I forgot the last point of this discussion is that China needs a stable and prosperous Latin America to safeguard China's overseas interests and deepen the economic cooperation. Because, as you know, China follows a principle doesn't interfere in the domestic affairs. But with the deepening economic ties, such as the case of Venezuela, and a lot of Chinese investment and loans in the country. So it's important to take care of the governance situation in the country, as well as Argentina and Brazil. They even changed the leadership, these kind of things. So it's important to maintain the intellectual cooperation and to make sure the Chinese investment interests are being safeguarded. So what can we learn from each other? I think there are many aspects. I think yesterday we discussed a lot about the role of the state in the economic growth. I think China, according to our experiences, we keep a very balanced, dedicated approach to balance the role of the market and the state in the economic growth. And in a gradually way, But there are some commonalities to share with each other. We face a lot of development challenges, how to identify the priorities. And second is how it is important to maintain the macroeconomic stability, and also to keep the balance between the structural reform and the national capacity building, and building a strong and sustainable public-private partnership. This is a challenge now for China also, because the Chinese government want to attract the private investment in the infrastructure, but it's quite difficult. We need to learn from your experiences. And also, we need to discuss, is there a big difference between the Santiago consensus and the Peking consensus? I think we need, maybe we need neglect the term of models. We need to focus on the successful experiences from this different kind of consensuses to get some real useful policy information. According to my experiences in Germany, I found that Germany, they also have a very strong national development bank, and also very strong regulation from the government, and also, of course, they have a very strong enterprises, not only doing manufacturing affairs, but also they offer strong support to the research of the academic world. So I think we need to learn the practical successful experiences rather than focus on the competition among the different models. It's nonsense. And also I think it is important to build the political consensus. Thank you. And to support the international economic structure reform agenda, because in a globalized economy, it is difficult to develop yourself by closing the door. So you need to be involved in the economic global governance to shape the rules. I think this is an important key point by raising the current Chinese leadership, trying to influence in the agenda setting the institutions to serve, to better serve the developing countries' development demands. So, and also I think both sides to learn each other on how to achieve inclusive growth on a sustainable way. So, and also with the Western theories and the local conditions, we need local solutions and local theory. This is yesterday we discussed about the Chinese school. I think this is also important for Latin American countries to contribute to the IR, to the global governance theory according to our own situations and the culture. 5 minutes, okay. There are several major issues need to be tackled by both sides. The first is a deindustrialization. I think this is not intentionally political exploration of the region. I think it's a kind of economic division of the labors in the world economy. Just like as China, it's unhappy to be treated as a cheaper manufacturing factory. It wants to be more competitive in the innovative sector, more value-added things. So I think both China and Latin America should work hard on how to educate its working force to make the population profits not based on the cheap labor, but based on educated skill and knowledge. So China fully understands, aware of the concern of deindustrialization of the Latin American countries. So it offered a solution to enforce cooperation in the investment and financial cooperation and the cooperation on the innovative sector. So this is this question. The other major issue is the knowledge gap. Since we are geographically very far away and also we don't know each other very much, so we need to minimize the knowledge gap. So we offered also some measures like the Confucius Institutes and more to promote the tourism and to offer some scholarships for the students and professionals. And also we are encouraging the culture exchange, especially during the trip of Premier Li Keqiang to Latin America in 2015. Invited some famous Chinese culture people here to talk to their counterparts in Latin America. The other issue is that China's relationship with left countries in the region. This is something tricky because China's economic relationship is stronger with these countries than the others. But these countries, to some extent, they have some anti-American intention. So it makes the relationship a little bit complicated. But according to the Chinese understanding, we understand why the left politicians, they are getting popular because of the challenge of the economic model in the liberalization, creating some kind of inequality, this kind of things. So it's kind of political efforts to correct the growth development road, but it has met the problems today. So I don't think this is a relationship is an ideology-oriented relationship. It's still practical. And the other issue is the China-US interaction in the region. I think basically this kind of relationship is quite municipal. It follows the logic of economic globalization rather than the geopolitical game. Just as yesterday, Dr. Yuan Alice has mentioned a lot of very fair argument about this relationship. I think it's a closer economic tie between China and Latin America will stimulate the U.S. effort to improve its economic tie with the region. And also, as the major foreign investors, both the U.S. and China has some common interest to improve the doing business environment in Latin America. And also, I think there are different comparative advantages among the U.S., China, and Latin America, especially with revolutionary, energy revolutionary in the U.S. domestic market. So I think all three sides should focus on the economic agenda rather than others. My last part of the presentation, I would like to analyze the strategic implications of China's engagement with the Latin American region. I think the relationship is mutually beneficial in nature. It might influence the spirit of other major powers like the US and the EU when they develop their relationship with the region. They might take a reference of the Chinese experiences. And also, the United States declared the end of the Monroe Doctrine in 2013, and also the rapprochement between US and Cuba, which is happened in the context of strengthening China-Latin America relationship. I think it tells a lot. And also, one interesting thing was that Latin America and the Caribbean has gradually gaining priority in the foreign policy of both the US and China, even though for different reasons. I think this is very good for Latin America to get attention by more and more major economies. And also, the center-right political forces are coming back in the region, but they still prefer a good relationship with China as well as the US. So the future picture is quite positive. And other implications, I think, the recent rounds of the proactive diplomacy in Latin America, initiated by both the United States and China, as world powers, they focus on the soft power and the economic engagement rather than the geopolitical ones. So it's good news for the region that the major economies are focused on the economic issues. And also, it was a surprise if you look at the picture through a zero-sum geopolitical game. You will get the wrong answer, I guess. But also, the new situation in Latin America shows that there is no easy answer to the geopolitical implications of China's presence in the region. So we need a more detailed and forward-looking analysis to the current relationship. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you for raising many geostrategic implications for the future. I think we are coming back to that point later on in the discussion. And I would like to introduce our second speaker of this panel, Nele. Nele is Associate Professor of International Relations at the Institute of International Relations at the University of Brasilia. She has experience in political science, international relations, and is currently doing research on the following topics. So Brazilian foreign policy, Chinese foreign policy, Brazil-China relations, and China-Latin American relations in general. Nele has a master's degree in political science from Sorbonne University in France and a PhD in international relations from the University of Brasilia in Brazil. And she developed a postdoctoral research project about China's foreign policy and Latin America at the Segul Center for Asian Studies at the famous Elliott School of International Affairs at George Washington University. And she is now talking about China's governance impact in Latin America, the Brazilian case. Okay, please.
Thank you very much, Nele. Good morning, everybody. Did you like the picture? Oh, it's a joke. It's just a joke. Okay, I'm going to talk about Brazil specifically, not Latin America, as I announced, but my objective is to enlarge and compare Brazil with other countries in Latin America and China's influence in this region. So my key question today is about the characteristics and challenges of China's policies and practices in Sino-Brazilian partnership, in particular during the last decade. So I'm not going to give you a definition about governance. I'm just going to use this concept as something linked to China's policies and practice for the moment. And then what am I going to talk about today? So I would try to understand China's policies and practice towards Brazil. This is the main objective. And the second objective is to understand the success and shortcomings. And then identify Brazil's reactions, face those results. Those are the three main objectives today. So I use the argument that the win-win principle provides a win for narrowly defined national interests of China. So I think that this rhetoric is really a rhetoric. And in practice, China is greatly focused on, first of all, trying to attain its own objectives. And sometimes they are coincident with Brazilian objectives, but not always. And the second argument is that the benefits are unequally distributed, causing deep distortions on Brazil's production sectors and environment. So, of course, Brazil has positive gains on trade and in terms of revenues, but not in terms of distribution of what everybody's sailing. Brazil, we have seen this yesterday, that Brazil, of course, is sailing much more commodities than manufacturing products. And of course, China is very worried about that because more pressures is coming from Brazilian government so that we can have a more balanced trade. But this has not been the reality since almost 45 years of relationship. And the third argument is that Brazil's government reactions produce very poor international dialogue, poor environmental law compliance, and very limited bargaining capacity in internal and international arenas and dialogue. So Brazil is not doing its homework. I'm not only talking about China, I'm also talking about Brazil, because in a relationship, all the parts count. So we have to observe both countries' policies and practice to understand why it's not working as it should work. So the general frame that I want to explain here in these 20 minutes is that the relations between China and Brazil are very important, are increasing intensively since the last 10 years. This is not going to come back. I think that Brazil will continue to have China as a very important partner for the last decade, for the next decades. I think that there's no turning back. That's why we need to study China more and understand where are the problems. And the second consideration is that China's demands towards Brazil conducted to new entanglements that compromise Brazil's productive sectors and environment preservation. So we should fix that. Otherwise, Brazil may look for other partners, or if it continues with China, it will have to face many problems. So we have to talk about that and try to fix that. So what would be the various scenarios in Brazil-China relations? The best would be the strategic partnership, and the worst would be competition or even conflict. So we should avoid conflict, we should avoid competition, but I think that we have many competitive situations already in Brazil-China relations, and there are many bad reactions already in Brazil's society and economic environment, and economic scenario, and also environmental reactions from some analysts. This is really clear already. And what would be this best scenario? And I'm considering that it doesn't exist for the moment. So the best scenario would be to have a very open trade with China, a very balanced trade with diversified and based on high quality goods. So we don't have an open space for trade. There are many tariffs in China's market, for example, for the chain of soya. Even though we export lots of soya, we cannot export all the chain with the same tariffs. And there are many non-tariff barriers, as we explained yesterday, in this relation. And we don't export high-quality products, even though we would love to. That's for sure that the government is supporting Embraer, because in the next 20 years, it is planning to sell more than 100 airplanes for China. That's not only the Embraer's project. All the enterprises in the world are planning to feed this market that is not yet completed. And in the investment and funding area, of course, Brazil wants to use China's money for the development of the country, to sustain innovation, science, technology in diversified areas. But I think that there is no spread of knowledge for the moment. There's no share of technology for the moment. And this is a specific policy. For example, we have space cooperation for more than 30 years, since 1988, and there's no spread of technology between China and Brazil, even though there was this big pressure to have. And of course, we have plans to have more cooperation. Maybe this can change in the next years, but I'm not sure of that. So in the cooperation area, there are plans to, for example, exchange information between Embrapa and Chinese laboratories. But this is so small in the big scenario of Brazil and China relations. And for politics, the promotion of high-level dialogue, joint planning, and consultation, this is something that they have done a lot since the beginning of the relations. And there have been many clear results, successful ones. The BRICS Bank is a result of this political dialogue. There are plenty of documents that have been signed between both countries. I think this is the most successful part of the relationship, a part of the trade, even though those constructions have served a lot China in its pressure to change international organization, to create new international organization. But I'm not sure that Brazil has profited enough from this political dialogue in different arenas. Since, for example, the rules in the new development bank created by the BRICS group, they're not yet clear. We are not sure where the money is going to be invested, who is going to fix the rules to invest this money, if who gives the money determines where the money is going to, or what are the conditionalities. Brazil is for the same conditionalities as the other banks, but this is not clear yet, so we cannot see yet the results that, for example, the BRICS Bank is going to bring for the society. We're going to discuss this maybe in the next panel. So the context is very important for this relation. We have a moving context, a very difficult context for Brazil, since we have this deep political and economic crisis. And this is not going to change in the next 3-4 years. So we expect that the bargaining capacity that Brazil has is going to diminish. So Brazil is going to give more to receive less in the next years. So this is a very bad situation for Brazil in the internal and international bargaining process. And I think that the China's lower economic path has stopped some investments. As Professor Ellis said yesterday, the Nicaragua Canal has been, for the moment, suspended. There are some analysts that says that there is short money. Others said that this is a political reason, but what we can see in Brazil is that some investments and loans announced were not effectively done because of China's slowing economic path. So this is what Professor Kevin Gallagher has been done for some 10 years, that he's been analyzing what has been announced and what has been effectively done in Brazil and in Latin America in general. So Brazil has this problematic internal condition, and this has very big implications for our relations. We are importing much less. We are exporting much more, even though the prices are going down. And in the international level, as I said, Kevin Gallagher also said that we could not profit from the commodity boom as we should, but so the moment has passed. What are we going to do? The prices fell down. We are going to sell more to have less. So this is a new equilibrium in the relation, and that's why investments are so important to compensate the losses in the trade area. So the variables I'm trying to understand in Brazil's foreign policy and China's foreign policy is that Brazil depends a lot on its internal dialogue. As we were discussing yesterday afternoon, what should we do to change this relationship? Should we be more aggressive or should we be more intelligent? I think that we should discuss more and involve more parts, involve more sectors, decide deeply inside the society what we should do, what would be better for everybody. So this dialogue is not dynamic as it should be, even though there are some efforts from the Brazilian government or the government part. And this has bad consequence to the international level, because Brazil goes to defend some sectors, as in the previous government. We are still defending commodity sectors, agriculture sectors, even though we have a right partner or a right government and not a left government anymore. So even though there are different ideological directions, we have the same decisions. So for Brazil-China relations, we need to manage our internal capacity. If we believe in Aaron Friedberg, he said, of course, for example, United States in its relations with China should depend more on its high-level educational system, should depend more on its open society to attract the most clever and people from all over the world, and to have money to foster this development. So Brazil should do the same. Brazil should invest in its educational system, should invest in the investment in those people, and should open its market and open its society for cooperation. We are still a very protective sector, a protective country, so we should think about that as we have discussed it yesterday about our politics, investment, trade politics. We are still a very close country that don't dialogue with its neighbors, for example. What have I found until now? My empirical findings, as I said, showed that there is this big division between manufacturing and commodity sectors, and the manufacturers, entrepreneurs, they have manifested clearly their desire to block China, to suspend the recognition of China as a market economy, even though China has reacted quite clearly that it will punish Brazil if the WTO decision would be in favor of China's economy recognition. So this is a competition, clearly not a cooperative or a strategic partnership when we talk about trade reactions and China's market economy recognition. So we still have to think about our policies to promote more innovation, more science and technology research to compete with China. And we are losing lots of market because we are not investing in science, technology, innovation, especially in very important sectors like telecommunications and energy. So the state-to-state level, as I said, Brazil is not really having a good dialogue with China and is not making pressure to have whatever it wants from China and its partners. And in BRICS, it's also more difficult because also Russia makes lots of pressure over Brazil, especially in the security area, and Brazil refuses to talk about any sensitive area like Ukraine or Syria or etc. So Brazil will not talk about so sensitive questions in BRICS, even though Russia would love to. So in the state-society dialogue, as I said, there is a lack of consensus. There are many sectors that have been excluded from this relation. There is a very clear support from the government to agriculture and mineral sectors. Our new agriculture ministry is in Asia since 1 month ago, signing agreements to sell soya, to sell beef, to sell all the agriculture products we have, with lots of success. I'm not sure what we're going to do with our environment with so many new agreements. And I think that the manufacturing sector is trying to react, but they are not enough organized to make pressure over the government. So this is just an example that the government is trying to make some dialogue in Viesp, in Itamaraty. So the government finance, they give money for the Council of Brazil-China Enterprises to discuss specifically the agriculture sector. There are many documents that have been produced to explain our interests in selling soybean, minerals, and so the government is supporting this sector bravely. But my opinion is that it should do the same with other sectors and not only for the agriculture sector. So we see there is this changing of political balance in Brazil. So many, that gives lots of power to agricultural sectors and not enough power. And this has big consequence for our structure and infrastructure. And many things are being voted in the Congress in favor of those new deals that is changing our geography, is changing our rivers, is changing our environment. And what we are going to see in the next years is the construction of more hydro roads to transport soya, to transport beef, passing by the Amazon. And this is serious change in our landscape. So what are the arguments that have been repeated since the last 10 years that the most, the biggest number of anti-dumping processes in Brazil are against China? And Brazil demands more reciprocity from China and opening markets, reducing tariffs, and blocking the big quantity of Chinese products in Brazil's market. And also the manufacturing sector is also complaining about the conditions they have inside Brazil, saying that the government should facilitate the reduction of costs for energy, for transportation, for logistics. So the Brazil's cost index is really, amazing in the bad sense. So this is just to confirm what Professor Ellis said yesterday. We are reducing our trade year by year, and enormously. We are exporting more, but receiving less money. It's a clear reduction due to our crisis and due to the China's new moment. And this is clearly imbalanced trade based on, of course, more than 90% of our products exported to China is based on soya and minerals. But we have good results, and as I said, from those sectors. So Embraer is one of the biggest favorite enterprise, as well as Vale do Rio Doce. So Embraer is signing more and more deals with China to assemble or to build or fabricate airplanes in China, and I don't think this is going to stop in the next years. And we are buying here in Rio de Janeiro some parts of the metro, but also France is selling trains to Brazil. And so the most clear impacts are the loss of some jobs, the loss of market share in Latin America and in the United States, and some rules that are not being respected. I can say that the Brazil's government should be blamed also, because they are they're getting more flexible in this application of the rules. There is this unequal trade, and there is this very big pressure over the environment and also the indigenous areas, as one student has reminded us yesterday. So this is more and more common to see the manifestations in Brazil, out China, you are getting our jobs. I think this is not only in Brazil, there are other manifestations around the world. And there is this, there are more and more studies about how soybean is eating our forests. So there is this great researcher, Philip Fernside, that is doing a great job about how aluminum, how soybean is polluting and consuming our environment. And I think we should pay attention to this enormously in the next months, not years. And Nele has talked about investments, just to show that China has the same logic of getting inside Brazil. Trade, investment, loans are always for the same sectors. So we should change that. We should invest in other sectors, in the spread of technology, in spread of knowledge, and not only facilitating the reduction of costs to export more basic products to support China's development. So as I said, there are similar objectives, but the effects are different. So both countries want the development of their countries. Both countries want to face the inequalities. Both countries want to develop infrastructure, and China has lots of knowledge about that and overcapacity that it should export to other countries. But how to do it is the question. Of course, we should profit from China moment, but how to do that in order to not repeat the same patterns from the past. So the China loans, as we said yesterday, China is giving more money, lending more money to Brazil, but the conditionalities are different, the sectors are different. So CAF, World Bank, IDB, they apply this money in very diversified sectors, and China privileges infrastructure, energy, and agriculture sectors. So this is a problem. And the conditionalities are also very important. We should force going up and now down the conditionalities to protect people, to protect the environment, and to protect the development of the country too. So those are the main and big, really important projects that China has in Brazil in the last 5 years, investing in oil. Just some data to say how much oil China is expecting to have from Brazil, and investing in transport of energy. State Grid in Brazil said that it wants to be the main enterprise in Brazil to produce, to transport, to distribute energy in Brazil. 3 China gorges want to do the same with the hydroelectric sector. And if Tapajós was not suspended, it would be one of the contributors to this project with huge impact in all the rivers from the Amazon region. So Belo Monte State Grid has already won 2 permissions to transport the energy. And there is this big project. Everybody thought this is not going to work. This is going to work, but in slices. So there is this great flexibility of rules that is going to be, we're going to observe in the next months. And there is this big objective to transport products that interest Asian countries, specifically China. So just to finish, there may be some factors that will retard this project, especially Brazil's political moment, the corruptions, many construction enterprises are blocked, and the lack of money, and so maybe this is going to take more time and China slow down. So as I said, the political relations are the best part of this relation, even though sometimes Brazil cannot use it for its own sake. And for BRICS, I also affirm that Brazil is a kind of following China's agenda, and China is benefiting from this agenda, for example, in its negotiation in IMF, and having more power inside IMF, and not really Brazil. And the conclusions is that, I know I have been clear, but just to finish, there is lots of asymmetries in trade. The investments loans are based or are directed to field sectors with growing impact on working classes and environment. And the political relations have been really positive, but they could be more organized, more planned to have good results for both parts. And the cooperation should be improved since it doesn't spread knowledge from China to Brazil and vice versa. And just to end, we have to open more our countries, China and Brazil, not only China, not only Brazil, so we could export more high quality products. The investments should be done in a more transparent environment to avoid pitfalls in environment or working classes. And the bilateral cooperation could be the solution for Brazil's development and to go up in the chain of knowledge. And the high-level political dialogue, as I said, should focus on joint project and not national objectives. So I would just thank you with this great view from Rio, from the Chinese view in Floresta da Tijuca. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're going to discuss your points later on, but I think this, so far what we have learned about the Chinese side and the Brazilian response is quite illuminating and will help us later on to further develop the strategic agenda. In order to complete the picture, I would now like to pass the word on to our Indian expert, because otherwise we wouldn't have covers the topic of our meeting. And I think everyone knows you. Nevertheless, I would just read out your short CV. And so, Ambassador Viswanathan, I hope I pronounced it in the correct way, has interests on cover politics, economics, history, literature, culture, music, and movies of Latin America. So you see, it's the all-encompassing picture. It's not just mere politics. He speaks Spanish and Portuguese languages, and has widely published on Latin America. He has one book on business with Latin America, and a second edition was published by Exim Bank of India in February 2005. He has also published guides for business with Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, Venezuela, and Brazil. And he has been ambassador of India to these countries after his posting as Consul General of India in Sao Paulo. And he was Director General of the Latin America Division in the Ministry of External Affairs of India. So that's quite impressive. And I think you're going to show us many inside views on, well, India's relations with Latin America.
Bom dia. Hoje é sexta-feira. Traga mais cerveja. Cerveja Brahma. The Indian god of creation. So when my Indian friends suspected my intentions for this weekend in Ipanema and Copacabana, I was going to be looking at Garotas, the Ipanema. I told them no. Mine is a spiritual pilgrimage to do worship of Brahma in Ipanema and Copacabana. India's relations with Latin America since 1947 has evolved in 3 stages. The first stage was 40s, 50s, 60s. It was the stage of mutual ignorance and indifference. We didn't feel the need to reach out to you, and it was the same with you. The second stage, 70s and 80s, was what I call as the stage of one-night stand. Occasional flirtation. Businessmen would do one deal and forget. The Latin American president will come to India, sign agreements, no follow-up. But since 1990, we are in the third stage of romance, mutual attraction, and love. And Latin America sings to India, "No me preguntas más. Déjanos imaginar que no existe el pasado, que nacimos al mismo instante en que nos conocimos." Do I need to translate this? You understand Spanish, right? Now, how does India respond to this Latin American song? La India sings, "Sedúceme, bésame, abrázame, ámame." You know the singer? La India, salsa singer from Puerto Rico. La India. Her famous song is "Sedúceme." In the last 3 decades, both India and Latin America have undergone some fundamental transformations. A paradigm shift of the market and the mindset. It is this new market and the new mindset which has opened up possibilities of new synergies and new complementarities. Now, let me illustrate what I mean by this new India and new Latin America. In late 1980s, President Fernando Henrique, President Gorbachev, and the Indian Prime Minister Narasimha Rao sought a meeting with the god to seek his help for solving the problems of their countries. First, it was Fernando Henrique. He told God, God, we have changed from dictatorship to democracy. I want to make India, Brazil as a first world country with so much of resources. And I want to achieve it during my time, 4 years presidency. The God looked at him and said, son, it is possible, but not during your 4-year term. It will take maybe a couple of decades. Then Fernando Henrique empezó a llorar. He started crying. Then it was the turn of Gorbachev. Gorbachev told God, God, we made history from communism to democracy. I want to transform Russia as a great country like United States. I want to do it during mi mandato, my time. God said, son, it is possible after the next generation, not during your 4-year term. So Gorbachev started crying. Then the turn of the Indian Prime Minister came. But before our Prime Minister opened his mouth, the God started crying. God said, I know what you're going to ask, but it is not possible during my time. So this was the old India. Now in 2016, a guy working with TCS, the Indian IT company, he sends a WhatsApp message to God. God, I want to come and meet you. Come on. So he goes for a meeting. And the God says, hey, son, I already told your Prime Minister. No, I can't help you. It's not possible during my time. What can I do for you? So this guy says, God, I'm not here to ask for your help. I'm here to offer my services. Why don't you outsource your work? Oh, our company can do your work at 1/3 of the cost and most optimally. That is the new mindset of Indians. Latin America, earlier there were all kinds of perceptions about political instability, economic volatility, excessive external debt, hyperinflation. There used to be a joke in those days that one can never say accurately the exact population of India or the inflation of Latin America. By the time you finish the sentence, both would have gone up. But now, in the last decade or so, Latin America has an average inflation of single digit with exceptions. And the external debt is 29% of the GDP, which is very healthy and manageable. And democracies are here to stay. And we in India bet on this new Latin America. Now, let me also illustrate what we see as the new synergy and complementarity. In the olden days, the economists of Raoul Prebisch's era, they used to say that countries like India, Latin American countries, third world countries, they have no complementarities. They are competitive. They are competing with each other to be cobblers and tailors for the developed world, to make shoes and shirts for the developed world. But today, the new paradigm is Reliance, the largest Indian company, imports crude oil from Brazil and exports diesel, making a clean $7 to $10 per barrel, which accounts for over 35% of India's trade with Brazil. A company called Sri Renuka Sugar imports raw sugar from Brazil, refines it in India, and exports to the region. Not only the Indians are smart, the Latin American pharmaceutical companies import $350 million of pharmaceutical raw materials, APIs from India, and make formulations in Latin America for your market, and they also export. Yesterday I told you the story of Cecilia Angelon, Cecilia Malhotra, who imported henna ingredients and made Surya henna. In the olden days, the distance was the big mental block for Indians. And came Reliance. They killed distance. You know, when we told the Indian Oil Corporation, the government company in India, to go to Latin America to diversify our source of import of oil, they said it's too far, the freight is expensive. And with the new mindset, the Indian Reliance found a way. They found that the very large crude carriers, which were carrying oil from Gulf to United States, they were coming back empty. They stopped near Mexico, Venezuela, with the margin. And that's how the business started. Today in Delhi, I enjoy eating apples and pears from Chile, fresh fruits and vegetables coming from Chile. They're cut down from 40 days to 30 days. So distance is no longer the mental block. And not only the companies have overcome distance, they also started using distance as an advantage. We have in Latin America 30 Indian IT and BPO companies operating from Mexico to Chile with some 25,000 Latin American staff. They have a new business model. They service their clients in North America in the same time zone, operating from Latin America with these 25,000 staff for 12 hours. And then next 12 hours, they shift to India. This is the new 12 by 12 business model, making use, taking advantage of the difference in time zone. And not only the Indians do, the Latin Americans do. Your company, Stefanini, has global delivery centers in India, servicing their global clients. Globant from Argentina, Softec from Mexico, they do the same thing with global delivery centers in India. Techint, an Argentine steel company, they have got 200 Indian engineers working out of Bombay to service their project in Middle East and Europe. There is a new paradigm of trade. You know, in the olden days, Indians not only thought Latin America was distant, but also they thought Latin America is less important than the neighbors or the other traditional trading partners. No longer. Last year, India exported $255 million to Guatemala, which was more than India's exports to Cambodia, a neighboring country, which was just $240 million. And they have the same population of about 16 million. Last year, India exported $2.86 billion to Mexico, which was more than India's exports to Indonesia, Myanmar, Canada, Russia, and Egypt. India did $654 million of trade with Dominican Republic, which is more than India's trade with Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, Central and East European countries, and Central Asian countries. Latin America was the largest destination for India's vehicle exports. Last year, we exported $2.7 billion, which is 19% of our global exports. We exported 29% of our global motorcycles to Latin America, which was $530 million. Today, the largest market for Indian cars is Mexico. We exported last year over $1 billion. Well, old economists wouldn't agree, because Mexico is one of the largest exporters of cars in the world. And Mexico is the destination for, largest export destination for our cars. Today, the largest destination for our motorcycle exports in the world is Colombia. We did last year $231 million. It is what the Indians have been doing. Now, let me also tell you what the Latin Americans do. In 2014, India was the third largest destination for Latin American exports as a whole in the world. Latin America exported $29 billion, to India, which was more than your exports to Germany or France, UK, Spain, or Japan. But in 2015, it went down to 6th position. But that's because of the crash in the prices of oil and commodities. And today, India is the #1 destination for Latin American exports of vegetable oil. #2 destination for crude oil, petroleum. #3 for copper, and #4 for gold. And it is not only at the macro level, the country level it is happening. It's happening at the company levels. Today we have the largest Indian agrochemical company called UPL, United Phosphorus Limited. The largest Indian company in agrochemicals. Today, they do more business in Brazil than what they do in India. They have investment of almost $500 million, and they're betting so strongly in Brazil. We have a small pharmaceutical company called Kaplin Point, exporting $40 million of pharmaceuticals. 95% of that goes to Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, Central America. We have an IT company, small IT company, MAN India Technologies, MANN. Young people started, and they said, well, let's go to a place where others have not gone, in the olden days, 2000. And they went to Panama, Dominican Republic, Venezuela, and Peru, and they made a few $100 million, and they become big now. And the Latin Americans also do it. You know, when Pepsi and Coke entered India after our protectionism and all, when they came, they killed the local brands. The Indian cola companies sold themselves or surrendered. And here comes a Peruvian company called AGE, A-G-E, AGE. Now this Peruvian company has the audacity to bet in the Indian market. They have set up a plant in Maharashtra, near Bombay, and they're selling a brand called Big Cola. Isn't it amazing? These great Indian corporations, they surrendered. And here comes a little-known Peruvian company, AGE, and they are betting with their Big Cola. Today, the third largest operator of multiplexes in India. We are a Bollywood country, millions of audience. But the third largest operator of multiplexes in India is Cinepolis from Mexico. There was an Argentine IT entrepreneur called Alec Oxenford. He co-founded a company called OLX.com, online classified advertisements, in collaboration with a French entrepreneur called Fabrice Brenda. Now this guy, when they started this one, they didn't launch it in Argentina, not in France. They launched first in India. Today, it has become a $20 billion company around the world. Yesterday, you were talking about services. Today, the largest corporate office in India is in Chennai, operated by TCS, where 28,000 staff works. And this was designed by an Uruguayan, Carlos Ott. So this is the new paradigm of business. Latin America has what India needs desperately. First, crude oil, petroleum. Last year we spent $10 billion. 15% of our crude oil come from Latin America. But we are thirstier and thirstier to fuel our growth. In 2005 and 6, our financial is from April to March. In 2005-6, we imported 99 million tons of crude oil from around the world. But in 10 years, last year, we imported 202 million tons, more than double. By 2040, our import would be 350 million tons. So here you have this thirsty India with no other resource but to increase the import. And see here what you have. You produce about 4 million barrels per day, and you can easily ramp it up to 7 million barrels per day. With this pre-salt here, privatization in Mexico, Argentina has the second largest shale gas and fourth largest shale oil reserves in the world, and they have just started. So you have reserves of over 340 billion barrels. And your principal market was United States. But United States has drastically reduced its oil imports thanks to the shale. You know, the Peruvians set up a very expensive LNG terminal to supply gas to United States. By the time they finished the project, United States said, sorry, we don't want. And the shipments ended up in India. So here you have this complementarity between what we desperately need and what you have. The second is vegetable oil, principally soya oil and to some extent sunflower oil. Last year we imported $2.5 billion. In 1992-93, immediately after our reforms, we imported 0.1 million tons of vegetable oil, 100,000 tons. Last year, we imported 15.7 million tons. And it's going up. There is no way India is going to become self-sufficient in oil seeds. Of course, we are self-sufficient in cereals, rice and wheat, but oil seeds, no. Now, the other commodity which is just started is pulses. In 1998-99, India imported 0.56 million tons of pulses. Last year, it was 4.5 million tons. We import from Canada, Australia, Myanmar, and Turkey. Now, this is a new area to diversify from soya to give protein to India with pulses. As I mentioned yesterday, in India, we have massive problems of land and water. Agricultural land is being taken away for urbanization, commercial, industrial, residential purposes. And water level is going down. Today, we have a fight between my state, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka, which is worse than the fight between India and Pakistan for water. The third item is, but you have abundant water and land, you can feed another 500 million people. Copper, as we industrialize, we are going to need more and more. Now, Latin America not only has what India needs, it also has something which India does not need but wants, gold. I don't know why we import gold. Last year we imported $35 billion of gold, with 1.7 billion from Latin America. In 1997-98, we imported 240 tons of gold, but last year it was almost 1,000 tons. There's a new complementarity emerging in entertainment business. There's a Brazilian actress called Gisela Monteiro. She acted in a Bollywood film called Love Ajkal with a café con leche complexion. People didn't know that she was a Brazilian. There's a Mexican actress called Barbara Mori. She acted with our principal actor Hrithikesh Roshan in a film called Kites. There's a Bollywood film called Dobby Got, for which the music was composed by an Argentine, Gustavo Santaolalla. The Argentines produced the most expensive animation film, cartoon film called Gatoro, for which it was a joint venture. Indians did the software and the Argentines provided the story. Now, you will find dozens of girls and boys from Latin America and Bombay trying to hit the Indian film industry and the fashion industry. There's a girl called Carolina from Uruguay went to Bombay, and now she's Carolina Graval. She married an Indian male model. Culturally, Latin Americans have taken interest in Indian yoga, meditation, gurus, so much. Today, in Rishikesh, the center of a sacred place in India, we have a new guru. His name is Sri Prem Baba. He's a Brazilian. His name is Oliveiro Fernandes. In 2002, he had a voice which said, "Você vai fazer 33 anos. Venha para India. Venha para Rishikesh." He went there, got enlightenment, and has become a guru with lots of Indian disciples with centers in 8 countries. Now, the Indians have started taking to Spanish, salsa, magical realism, and of course, they are great admirers of the Latin American left. I saw a district level conference in Kerala, and I saw pictures of Che, Fidel, and Chavez. The new trinity of the Indian Marxists, same like Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Now you know who is the god of destruction. The Indians, who believed in, work is worship, that kind of thing. Today they like the Latin American spirit of celebra la vida, segundo a segundo, nada se guarda, todo se brinda, sung by Argentine Axel. I tell the Indian businessman that there are 2 risks in doing business with Latin America. Number 1, when you visit Latin America, you will come back happier and younger. And second, you may not come back. You might fall in love. The risk of doing business within Latin America is falling in love. There are 3 Colombian boys from an IT company. They were sent to Colombia and promptly fell in love with 3 Colombian girls, resigned from the company, started their own consultancy company called Sofo Solutions, which is doing exceptionally well. Bank Colombia has invested in their company. The secret of success of this company called Kaplan Point, which is selling pharmaceuticals in Guatemala, is the owner sent his son to Guatemala, and he promptly fell in love with a Guatemalteca. And that is the secret of success. Now, you would ask, I mentioned 3 stages of evolution of relations between India and Latin America. What is going to be the next stage? Well, if you ask an Indian, they say after love, it is marriage. But when I tell my Latin American friends, they are a bit scared of getting married to an Indian. They don't want to get stuck for 7 reencarnaciones. So they sing, "No te prometo amor eterno." ¿Por qué? No puedo. Soy un cazador de mariposas, tripulante de nubes. So I tell them, okay, let's do a compromise. What do? We do this 21st century relationship, not a marriage for 7 reincarnations. Let us do amigovio. Amigovio. Amigo e novio. Where we would be partners. Partners adding value to each other, but we don't complain or talk about differences. We don't go to talk to Argentina and Mexico about our Security Council permanent membership. So we work on areas where we have synergies and complementarities. Let's be amigos. Thank you.